episode of the LEI'D Back Life podcast, where we're talking about how to love entrepreneurship and improve daily while also having a phenomenal life. I get spoiled by the guests that we have. So last week we had Elise Bowie. We talked about what you need to have an empowered life from a business owner perspective. And now I've got my good friend Rho Thomas on here, who's going to talk to us about, in essence, like how to spend money towards a life, how to create those things, how to find financial freedom. So for those who don't know her, she's an attorney and financial coach who believes that true wealth is having control of your time. If you don't already know why she's on the show, like that one sentence nailed it right there. She helps lawyers get out of debt and build their net worth to create freedom and choice in their lives. She also hosts the Personal Finance for Lawyers podcast, where she shares strategies each week for lawyers who improve their money mindset and manage their money to achieve true wealth. I love that so much.
Thank you.
How are you?
Well, how are you?
I am doing very well. We were chatting in the green room a little bit about how freezing cold it is everywhere. So for those of you, I mean, I am still in the Hawaiian shirt, but I'm wearing sweatpants and real shoes. So just
And
know
I have
that.
on a sweater because it is sub-freezing here.
There we go. Such is life, I guess. But the beauty of our listeners' current situation, or where they're working towards, is the ability to have the flexibility, the freedom to have control of their life when it gets super cold or whatever it is. And so we'll segue into that through that conversation. Here's what I want to know. Like, I guess start for me with, like, where is your normal client coming to you from the place of? Are they in debt, or are they looking to how to spend the money now that they have money, or is it either one?
So it tends to be more of the in debt, not sure how to get out of it. But there definitely is this undercurrent of how to spend the money now that you have it, because a lot of my clients are maybe the first person in their family to be a lawyer, or this is the first time that they've made this kind of money or that kind of thing. And so there is this uncertainty about what to do with the money now that I have it.
All right, so then I know we're gonna focus on that part of it, but let's go if there's any quick tips, like at the point that you are in debt, that you have this deficit, what can you do to still have a great life as you're working your way out of it?
Yes, I think that what you said is so important because
Yeah.
often when people are in debt, they get so laser focused on the debt that they end up making their lives miserable in service of trying to get out of debt as quickly as possible. And that's a common way of talking about getting out of debt, but I don't think that that is the best way. And I'm not about living a miserable life, right? Like life is to be enjoyed. And yes, you might have debt that might be part of it, but that doesn't have to be the whole thing. And so, one of the things that I teach my clients is to have a fun account. And this account is just for you to set money aside so that you can have fun in life, that you can enjoy things in life, but you make sure that you're not taking yourself off track with your personal financial goals. So for
Yeah.
example, it's like, let's say you've got your budget. Like most of us are used to paying our bills, right? We pay our mortgage or our rent. We pay for the utilities, we buy groceries, all of that kind of stuff. But most of us don't have a set amount that we give ourselves for fun spending. And so what I see a lot is people feel guilty or they feel ashamed because they spent money on something that they enjoyed, something that they liked, but they felt like that money could have gone to something more responsible, right? And so when you give yourself that fun account, you give yourself that permission to spend on the fun because you've already planned for it and you know that all of your other stuff is taken care of. You're still going to achieve whatever financial goals you have. And now I can spend this money guilt free.
See, I love that because, like, I mean, technically, it is like if you are spending it on this versus spending it on that, you are pulling out of that. But at the same time, like, what the heck is the point of living and having money if every penny needs to go towards, rice and beans or whatnot?
Exactly. Exactly. And I think a lot of times we only feel guilty about spending on things because we do hear so many messages about being financially responsible, having savings, saving for retirement, paying off debt, all of that stuff. But I believe that money is to be enjoyed as well. Like if we are making money, there is no problem with us also spending some of it on ourselves.
Well, it's so interesting because, like, the way that you're framing this to me like strikes me as like diet. And so, from this, like, diet comes from the Greek word for lifestyle. Like, it is supposed to be this forever thing. We have money forever, but then we end up with like these weird situations where it's like, oh, let's do this for 30 days, or oh, I have to get this spending done. And so, like, I love the way that you're trying to create this, long-term growth plan for them, while still having that fun fund, right? Is it a fun
Yeah.
fund?
A
There we
fun
go.
account is
A
how I
fun
usually
account.
say it, or
That's
fun spending account. Yeah, and
that's so much less tongue twisty.
I love that you brought up diet. I did not know that about the history of the word, but I think so often people want to approach their finances in the same manner as a crash diet, right? Like, I'm just going to eat kale for 30 days and drink nothing but water. And it's like, yes, you might then lose weight very quickly, but what happens when you go back to eating normally, right? Like eating like a regular person again. Like, eating only kale is not sustainable. And in the same vein, only doing the responsible things, only, doing the no spend, whatever else, that's not sustainable either. And so I think you want your money management to be a lifestyle. You want it to be something that you can keep up with 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the line, because that's how you maintain those results. The same with your health, right? With eating healthy foods and working out and all of that. It's not this, you know, sprint 30 days, I'm going to do all of this and then go back to doing the other things. That's how you get into that yo-yo diet situation,
Yeah.
that cycle. And I think the same happens with money, where people will do a no spend challenge and they spend nothing for, a month, 2 months, 3 months. And then you almost go all the way to the other end and you kind of splurge too much and end up taking yourself off track with all of the progress that you made in that short time period.
Well, and I think like so much of this is knowing yourself, right? Because I think it would be cool to do like how long could I go without actually spending money? Like just something along those lines. But at the same time, like I know that I don't have that problem. Whereas like if I did it with food, I am absolutely going to bounce back and end up at some all you can eat Golden Corral style buffet at the end of it. So I think like part of this is knowing what you can do yourself or what will be fun versus what's punishment. I
That
don't know if
makes
that's the right
sense.
way.
And I think, to your point, a lot of times, like, the people who have trouble with spending are going to have or not have the progress that they want. They're not going to have the
Right.
savings that they want, or the retirement investments, or that kind of thing. And, for someone else, it might be that their vice is something else, right? So as you said, knowing yourself, knowing what the thing is that you're struggling with can let you know if this strategy would actually work for you or not.
And I assume like as they're moving from that debt, having a deficit to having money to invest, having the surplus, like I imagine the fun account becomes you put more money into it.
Yeah, you absolutely can. Or I also tell my people, like, your plan from month to month can change. Because I think often we think, oh, this is my budget forever and ever, amen. Right. And it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be that way. So it might be that your fun account is X this month, but next month it's your best friend's birthday and you're doing a trip or, whatever. So you put more in there.
That makes total sense. Or at least know that you're going to end up spending that whole fun account on that one night out, that one event, the weekend cruise, the whatever it's going to
Exactly.
be.
Exactly. It's all fluid, right? Our finances aren't static because we're not static. Our lives aren't static. The things that we're spending on, the things that we're doing from month to month change. And so our finances and the plan for them can change with those things.
So, are you walking people through figuring out like what is worth them spending out of that fun account?
Kind of. So,
Okay.
one of the first things that I do with my clients is I have them think about what they value, the things that bring them joy, the things that are most important to them. Because what I found is a lot of times we're spending a lot of money on stuff we don't even care about, on stuff that's not important to us. And so, if we can kind of align our spending, decrease the amount that we're spending on the stuff that's not as important to us so that we have that money available for the things that are more important to us. And so within that, there might be some things within the fun category that get increased because they had been spending on other things that weren't as important.
But in terms of like, but I guess like there is no general answer for what we're going to enjoy and what's fun and what's worth it. So there is that individual component of like how you're helping them think through what is most valuable to them to then spend money on where they're going to get the most value back or the most enjoyment or whatever it is in this case.
Exactly. And it looks different for everyone because personal finance is personal. So what's important to me may not be important to you. So for example, perfect example, I got so much heat on LinkedIn. I know we're connected on there, but I don't know if you saw this. It was a few months ago. But I talked about how when my husband and I were getting out of debt, so we had almost $500,000 of student loan debt plus a mortgage and a couple of other things. So it was like $678,000 of debt total. But during that time, because we used this fun account strategy, I bought my first pair of luxury shoes. They were like, I don't remember exactly how much they were at that point, but they currently retail for $1,200. And so I put on there that I bought a pair of $1,200 shoes while getting out of $678,000 of debt. And there were a lot of people who thought that that was just so irresponsible and, whatever else. For those people, buying shoes that cost that much doesn't make sense, right? That's not
Right.
important to them. I like fashion. I like beauty. I like those types of things. And those shoes were something that I had been looking at for years. So when I had saved up the money for them, like I had my fun account and I would intentionally not spend everything in that account each month until I had enough to purchase the shoes. And then I went and I bought the shoes and I was able to do that without taking us off track from our goal of getting out of that student loan debt. So that's something that I would spend on. My husband definitely wasn't spending $1,200 on a pair of shoes. That's not his thing, right? So, yes, what we spend on is going to vary from person to person. For some of my clients, it might be a golf membership. For some, it might be going out to eat a lot. Like I remember one client is a big foodie and he had a huge budget, huge in my eyes because I'm not as much of a foodie, for going out to eat. Those types of things, they're going to change from person to person because it's a reflection of our values or the things that are important to us.
Well, and I mean, look, I have to imagine the majority of people buying $1,200 shoes are buying them into debt. So, like, you were one of the people that either could immediately afford it or had a plan to be able to afford it instead of the impulse buy of some crazy awesome shoes.
But I wonder though, is that statement true? Because there are a lot of people, like I know with your clients, you're helping them to make more money.
Yeah.
So maybe they've got $1,200 of discretionary income, and for them, buying shoes with that money is important or is
Oh,
something that's
yeah.
valuable. You know what I'm
Well,
saying?
I just like so pre-COVID, if you had no debt and 10 bucks in your pocket, you were richer than the average American. So
True.
pre-COVID, the average American was in debt. I have to imagine post-COVID, it's worse. Obviously PPP loans and stimulus checks and whatnot help, but like as those go away, I think there are more people in debt. And
Mm.
so
And I
just
think I think you're absolutely right, but I also
yeah.
think the average American is not buying those shoes.
Well, yeah, yeah. No, I
At
get
least
that.
according to the comments on my LinkedIn post.
Right. Well, but it's like, they have the what we think rich looks like and it's the whatever shirts and it's like what rich actually looks like. It's all these billionaires wearing like what to me looks like a
A plain gray
Target
t-shirt.
Hanes plain white t-shirt. Come to
Yes.
find out it's a $300 shirt or whatever it is. It just like doesn't, the people that want to look rich are branded. The people that are rich are just wearing like super expensive things that don't carry.
That you may or may not know is actually a
Right.
luxury brand. Yeah.
I'm like, mind you, guys, don't worry. Like this is, I don't know. I think this was from Old Navy, so I'm not secretly rocking a,
$500
yeah.
Hawaiian shirts out here.
But it's nice. It's dry fit and whatnot. But no, but I love like, but that's so important about one, enjoying the path out of debt, and two, focusing your resources on where they get you the best return. In this case, like pure enjoyment. It is amazing to me how many times we do things because we think we have to, and then they're not fun, and we're out the time, we're out the money, we're out, whatever it is versus something else.
Yes, 100%. And to an earlier point that you made, where you were talking about trying to look rich versus actually being rich. I just talked about on a podcast episode that comes out actually tomorrow
Ooh,
about
there we go.
how a lot of times lawyers are val how did I put it? Lawyers are valuing appearances over reality. And exactly what you're saying, like, oh, I'm a lawyer, so I'm supposed to have this kind of house, or I'm a lawyer, I'm supposed to have this kind of car, or I'm supposed to go to these types of events or be in these types of clubs. And a lot of times we're spending money to appear wealthy when our actual finances are a mess. And I referenced the book, The Millionaire Next Door. Have you heard of it?
Oh yeah.
It was such a good book, right? And
With
for
the driving
anyone,
like a 1980
right.
F-150 and the average car, stuff like that.
Yeah, so it's like for anyone who hasn't read the book, the premise of it is wealth looks nothing like we think it does. Like the media portrays wealth, like Jordan, you were saying, as like the all these big luxury brands and being in this kind of house and being in this kind of car. And don't get me wrong, there are, I'm sure, wealthy people who are in those types of things. But I think a lot of times the average American sees those things and thinks that these are the markers of wealth. And so I'm supposed to have these things to look wealthy, but they don't spend the time to manage their finances in a way to actually build wealth. So we're spending a lot of time keeping up appearances, but the reality is not matching.
Well, and the crazy thing to me is, as a business owner, you can spend money as a positive ROI in a way that it should never be that case. Like you can go to the fancy dinner and end up getting a case from it because you met somebody else who's well-to-do, because you brought a referral source. You could join the most expensive country club and triple your business the next year because now you're working with other people that have high net worth, no other people with high net worth, whatever it is along those lines. So like if you find the stuff that you truly enjoy, and you are showing up the right way, you can actually make like crazy purchases work for you.
No, I really like that. And I heard someone similar or someone say something similar on YouTube. Another like I like a lot of entrepreneur type content. And I don't remember who the person was, but he had spent a big amount of money on maybe a house or on some large purchase like you're saying, but whatever it was put him in proximity to other people who he could then do business with. So he was able to strike these business deals. And so even though he was spending what someone might consider a large amount on whatever this item was, that item actually was an investment for his business and allowed him or kind of facilitated these business deals that he was able to do. So I think you're spot on for people who are business owners, as long as we're actually using the thing in that way, like using the thing in a way that furthers our business. Because sometimes we'll say, oh, this is an investment, but there's no parts of how we're using it that makes it an
Right.
investment.
Well, so I know like Dan Martell went through this whole thing telling people to like buy a supercar, buy a Ferrari, buy a whatever, and then
I
like go to
think
the
that's
groups.
exactly who it was.
But
Yeah.
okay, so listen, I want to be very clear. I get his point. I, as a lawyer, am sitting there from worst case scenario. I'm imagining this group of like 20 supercar drivers that are all now $500,000 in debt. None of them actually have money. They all finance the supercar and then so that they could get into this group. And now it's like a group of all of them where nobody actually can afford what they're driving.
Right. And so I
Or
think that there's balance there. Go ahead, finish your point. I'm sorry.
well, I was gonna say, or as I call it, Miami would be the other version of that. I grew up in South Florida, so that's I can make fun of my home base.
No, so what I was gonna say is I think there's balance there because someone like Dan Martell or whoever these other, multi-million or billion or whatever business owners are, like buying a supercar like that is not going to take them off track financially. Whereas someone else who maybe isn't quite as far along business wise, financial wise, like that is going to be a hindrance. And so for him, because I think it was like there's a secret club of whatever type of car he got that like if you're an owner of the car, then you get invited to these types of events or
Sure, there
something
you
like that.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
And so it's like if you're able to afford that type of investment, that or we won't call it an investment, that type of car, then that is the type of person that he wanted to be doing business with. I think that was it. Thank you for putting more specifics to my super vague. I saw some guy on
Yeah,
YouTube.
whatever. My all-time favorite moment, literally, my mom and I were sitting there, I don't know, my child was alive, but he was young, so 4 or 5 years ago. And she was like, "You remember that guy that was in that movie?" And flat out, I was like, "Matt Damon?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I was like, I did not think that that was gonna work that way, but it did. Um, Anyway,
You got a
but
superpower.
yeah, well, it's never happened before or since. It was that one coincidence where it worked out. No, but it's interesting because like I met with one of my mentors a while ago and I was like, look, how do you find new not referral sources, but like other people to hang out with who are like-minded, like friends, something along those lines. Like just how do you find these people? And his advice was kind of similar to this. He's like, I go eat at this nice restaurant by my house that I like on like a Tuesday or Wednesday, and I sit at the bar. And I do that every week for a couple weeks, and then I start realizing like the other people that are sitting there. So these are people that can afford to drop 100 to 150 bucks a plate on a dinner in the middle of the week for no real reason. Like there, we have something in mind. We are of similar, we live in the same area. We are similarly financially set, whatever it was. And so like it's so true along these lines of just like using that as membership access to a community, to an organization, to a group, to I don't know. It's an interesting way to look at things because I think that like if you're not a business owner or not a solopreneur or not somebody who has like a sales commission, like that just doesn't apply to you. There's no way to monetize it. But I
Yeah.
don't know that we should be monetizing it, or at least not first.
Well, and I love that you shared that example because it shows how, like, basically how the Dan Martell supercar example works on a smaller scale. You know what I'm saying? Like your mentor is going to this nice restaurant that, has expensive plates and that kind of thing and is able to be around like-minded people because of the time of day that he's there, because of the restaurant that it is. Like these people who are here at the same time are similarly situated. So I know that I can probably strike up a conversation, maybe build a relationship, and ultimately do business with them. And I think that's the same thing that Dan was talking about with the supercars, where it's like, I'm going to these things because I like cars. Other people who are able to buy these types of cars are similarly situated. Now I'm going to these events, building relationships with them, and ultimately we can maybe do business together.
Well, but that's like we're all looking to fit in, right? Like we're looking for a community. And I mean, I'm wearing a Hawaiian shirt. I want to stand out, but like I want to fit in somewhere. And so it's wild to me whether that's a church, whether that's a restaurant, whether it's a gym, whether it's a supercar group, whether it's some, random Facebook group for people that love a specific type of comic book that came out 20 years ago. Like it's wild to me to find these organizations or these communities or these groups. And then like to go back to your point about the value of spending money, like if it's something you genuinely enjoy and you tend to like other people that would genuinely enjoy spending money on the same thing, like it's a good way to come together.
Yeah, I agree. And it makes it less businessy, like it takes it out of your typical, I'm going to this networking event and I'm just doing something that I enjoy, something that interests me, and I'm able to connect with other like-minded people. And then, oh, look, you also are in the same industry, or you are someone who would fit with my business in some way. And I like you as a person. So I'm going to reach out to you so that we can do business together.
Well, and ultimately, I don't think anybody hires me because I'm a lawyer. I think they hire me because either they think I do a good job because of a referral, because of seeing an ad, because of a testimonial, or they think I'm a good person or a cool person because we like the Miami Dolphins. We both talk about hanging out with our kids, like whatever it is more than that. Like the what you do is sort of the table stakes. It's who you really are that makes people figure that you're the right fit.
Yeah. I mean, let's be real, they're hiring you for your super cool Hawaiian shirts. I
You
think we all
know?
know that.
And the funny part is there's definitely people who are not hiring me because of it. I'm like, great, because there's a thousand
Exactly.
other things I would do to upset you by, like if you don't want a firm that does casual Friday every day, like you have a million other options.
No, and that's so beautiful because like you are repelling the people who you're not for, but there are other people who are like, hey, he's got this Hawaiian shirt on, like he's really laid back, he's chill. Oh, he also likes the same sports teams that I like, or he also likes this other hobby that I have. And so they're finding these things that you have in common, and they're attracted to this thing that makes you stand out that is repelling other people. I love it.
Yeah, thank you. So, as people move through working with you, as they move from the deficit to the surplus, as they start putting things in away in investing, I don't, well, like what I don't know what term you use from that.
Yeah, so typically with me, they are saving, they're paying off debt, and then they have money to invest. I teach the basics of investing, but because I'm not a financial advisor, I don't give them specific financial advice. So I would
Okay.
say as they are building their net worth, as they are achieving their financial goals, maybe that's a kind of big way,
Yeah.
overarching way to encompass all of the things.
Hey, all, I want to take a brief break from this episode of LEI'D Back Life to tell you about a really good opportunity that we have for all of you. So, I'm going to be hiring a new executive assistant while my current executive assistant is still here. This is probably the first time I've been able to do this as seamlessly as it's going to happen this time. So, I wanted to sell that opportunity to all of you so that you can have the opportunity to either have your EA trained or feel comfortable training an EA for you going forward. That's going to be $1,000. What you're going to get is our 50-page SOP, which you could work off of right there. A discussion about what we're looking for in this position, why the specific things that we want for my EA based upon me, our job posting from this, a series of interview questions, and then last but certainly not least, you'll have access to 2 different 2-hour trainings. You can come, you can have your assistant come, you can watch the trainings afterwards, and then 2 other 1-hour Ask Us Anything. So that would be me, my current EA, and the future EA. That'll be all for the month of February, and anybody who buys it, you'll have access to recordings going forward. If you buy it soon enough, you'll have access to show up with us live as those things happen. So that's going to be $1,000. If you're interested, you can click in the link that will be attached to this video, or just reach out and let me know and we will add you to it. All right. And now back to this episode of the LEI'D Back Life podcast. So as they're achieving these financial goals, walk me through the money of enjoying their life.
Yes. So I think, as I talked about earlier, when we are making money for the first time, sometimes that can feel uncomfortable. And it's like, okay, I don't know. Like, I actually had a client once who felt bad because there was a large unhoused population in her city. And so she felt that she shouldn't be spending money because there were other people in need. And, we just talked about the fact that her spending does not take away from this population. And her having money actually can help the population because she can give to organizations that support them, that kind of thing. So that's an interesting thing. I think that comes up the idea of like feeling bad for having because there are people in the world who don't have. And that's something that people work through as well. I told you about the having the fun account, having that fun money budget, but other things that we do that support their lifestyle and being able to do the things they want to do is having savings buckets. So, for example, travel tends to be a big one, and we will set aside money. I love, there's an account. I should see if they have some sort of like sponsorship thing. This is not
There
sponsored.
you
This is
go.
an account that I use and that I teach all my
Until
clients about,
we
but it's
get you an
called,
affiliate
I
benefit
know, like
from.
I need to look into this because I've been telling everybody about it. But Ally Bank has a savings account that has savings buckets in there. So it's one account, but you can divide up the money across different savings goals. So you'll have your
Mm.
emergency fund bucket, but then you can have your vacation fund, or you can have your new car or your down payment for your house or whatever it is. And so I just love being able to earmark the money for these different things because if it's just like one big pot of money, sometimes it's like, well, can I spend this? Well, how much do I have for this or how much do I have for that? And so having these like clearly labeled buckets, then we can see like, okay, this is how much I have saved for my vacation or for whatever goal. But saving is one of the things that we do to make sure that they're able to afford some of the larger purchases that they want to make, or, things like travel, I guess, as I said, tends to be a big one. And so we'll look at, okay, I want to go to Puerto Rico or I want to go to Italy. These are places that a couple of my clients are working on right now. So let's look at what the hotel that you want to stay in is, or let's look at how much the Airbnb would be. Let's look at transportation. It's like we'll look at and kind of eyeball these different costs and get a good estimate for what this trip might cost. Then we look at when they want to take the trip, and then we back into there how much they need to be saving for it. And so that's one way that they're able to use their funds to fund the life that they want and not only sit around in their house staring at the wall until they save or until they pay off debt or whatever.
Well, and bonus points, like as you know, I'm thinking from the business owner perspective along these lines, you have this trip in your mind, you are started saving money for it, and then by the time you go to book, you're like, oh, let me also check my rewards points on my credit card and be like, oh, I can get the flight, and with that, I can get the hotel included with that. Like I already had the money set aside, but now because I waited 8 months to do this, I have built up the rewards points to get to it as
Yes.
while either still having the cash or then investing the cash in the next thing or a different bucket or whatnot.
And I think too, one benefit or another benefit of waiting, of practicing that delayed gratification, is that you're able to take the trip in a way where your finances remain steady, if that makes sense. Because sometimes
Hmm.
people will, it's like, I want to take this trip right now. And now I'm stressed the entire time I'm on a trip because I put the whole thing on credit and I didn't really have the funds to be able to pay for it. And I don't know what's going to happen. Like there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of stress that comes around travel for a lot of people. And it's all because they don't plan in that way, or they don't have, like you said, have the rewards points that are built up and things like that. Do you do travel hacking?
Wait, hold on. I'll answer that 1 second.
Okay,
But
go ahead.
this is great because I want the last week's episode with Elise, like we talked about this from the opposite standpoint. We talked about this from like the systems and people in place at the business so the business can run while you were gone. So it's interesting you frame it now from the money standpoint. For travel hacking, honestly, no, because I don't think it's worth my time. But
Same.
I do love reading the article about the person that like opened up a credit card and then flew to Bali first class for on,
$5.
yeah, I do like that, but then I'm like, my hourly rate times doing that times this ends
Yeah.
up not being my thing.
No, I'm 100% with you. I was curious because you were talking about the points and like, oh, I've racked up enough points and all of that. I value simplicity in my finances because I think trying to juggle all these different things and remember that I have to use this card for groceries and gas, but this card for when I go to restaurants because I get to it, I can't, like, I just don't want to do all of that. I don't want to keep up with all the
Yeah.
things. And so I value keeping things simple. And I think by keeping things simple, it also helps people to stay motivated to actually look at their finances. And I think looking at your finances is how you keep things on track and moving in the direction that you want them to.
See, yes, 1,000% agree. But then like with the PI firm, we'll advance tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in costs on some cases over time. And so like every now and then, like I will have all this planned out for vacation and I will log in to Chase for whatever the word. It's like you have it's never it's some a crazy amount of points.
Yeah.
You have I guess the points are a penny. So sometimes I'll log in, it's like you have 100 something thousand points. And I'm like, oh my God, that's 10 grand. Maybe my math is off. Whatever it is, just crazy points from some of these things. I'm like, okay, cool. So now like my 6 year old can fly business class also, or all right, we will stay at that hotel, or whatever it is along those lines.
Yeah, I use the points as a bonus. They aren't the main strategy. It's like we have one card that does points. My points, though, I don't do like I can't use the points for specifically like for a flight because we don't have a like an airline credit card. We have a card, it's actually no longer available, but it offers the points as travel credits, like statement credits for
Ah, there
travel.
you go.
Yeah, so it
Too
works
convenient.
out
That's why they got
still
rid of
very
it.
nice. It worked out very nicely.
I love it. All right, so I want to talk about my newsletter, then we'll come back to this. So this week's newsletter is pretty interesting. We're going to talk about weekly planning, but from the standpoint of beginning with the fact that I don't understand how weeks work. Like a day is us going around rotating. A year is us going around the sun. A week is like this random thing that humans were like, why don't we get a 7 day week with no real basis to it? And we just were like, sure, let's keep it, despite the fact that like it's not divisible into a 365-day year anyway, or a 30-day month. Like it makes no sense. But weeks are a thing that all of us agree to honor. And so let's make them awesome. And that is this week's newsletter. You're cracking up.
Because you're hilarious.
But it's true. Like all of our sense of time makes sense, but for weeks.
Yes. No, I I agree. And I just had never thought about that
Yeah,
before
well, and
you were
even a month
talking.
was like a bunch of Greek and Roman people being like, "Oh, that those stars in the sky seem like we will see them at the right time frame for this month." And weeks were just like, we need something else in between a month and a day. So like we're just gonna make it.
Oh man. Well, I love that you're breaking it down though for the people. It's going to be wonderful.
I'm excited. All right, so what else, like as we get closer to where we want to be, as we are walking this journey on this path towards our financial goals, what else should we be spending money on? What else should we be thinking about what to spend money on? Like, what is the advice to help more people live a great, wonderful, amazing life?
I would say throw out shoulds because there are so many
Ooh.
rules telling us what we should do. You should do this, you should spend that, you should save this. I don't have to do anything that anybody else tells me I should do. I need to do what works best for me, for my family. And as I said earlier in the conversation, personal finance is personal. So no one can tell you what you should have or what you should do besides you. Someone can give you
Mm.
maybe guidelines that they've seen, things that I've seen in terms of how much to spend on a house that will allow you to still make progress on your finances or, that type of thing. But I can't tell you you should spend on this or you shouldn't spend on that because it's definitely going to be different for each person because each person's needs, wants, values, goals are all different.
So then how do you know not what you're doing is right? How do you know what you are thinking about, working towards is correct?
I don't know that there really is a correct, but I
Good,
think
good lawyer answer.
yeah. But it's true, right? Because, so for example, have you heard of the financial independence, like retire early,
Yeah,
all of that stuff?
fire.
Yeah. So for someone who wants to retire at 35, the amount that they need to be spending and putting aside and whatever else is different from someone who has their own firm, who enjoys what they're doing, and maybe just wants to have a little bit more flexibility. You know what I'm saying? And
Have
so
you
that's why I
ever
say you can't say, well, that's why I say you can't say what's right or wrong. But go ahead.
have you ever read Rich AF by Vivian too?
No, but it's on my list. That's so funny that you brought that up.
It,
Somebody else just recommended it to me.
so I mean, like it is designed to be an introduction to finances. She has the most amazing analogies. Like tax brackets are pizza with different toppings in a way that makes so much sense. But like her thing on fire was so funny because she's like, but are you really retired if now you sell a course on fire and helping other people achieve retirement? Like that to me seems like a job. And I was like, yeah, it does. That's a good point. Like if it's like the CrossFit of financial stuff, you have to tell everybody you do it.
No, and that's 100% true. But there are people who retire who don't sell anything. Like I actually have a
Right.
friend who retired right at the beginning of 2020, actually. And she just wanted to travel the world. And that's what she's been doing ever since and just living off of her investments.
There we go. Great time to do it or terrible time to do it, depending upon if she was still able to travel.
Yeah, and a lot of people were questioning whether that was the right time for her to leave her job because she had done some interviews and things like that right before the pandemic happened. And so she wasn't able to travel right away, but then she, was able to travel and has been doing all of that and shares it on her Instagram and all of that kind of stuff.
Ah, there we go.
Yeah.
Well, good. I'm glad it worked out because what a time to be
Right.
alive, trying to do it. I don't know. I don't know that anybody knows anything anyway.
No, exactly. And that's what I'm saying, especially when it comes to money stuff. Like, I can't tell anybody what they should do, what they shouldn't do. I can give you guidelines. I can tell you what has worked well for me, what has worked well for other people. But what works for one might not work for someone else because of those differences in the goals and the things that are important to them and what they want to work toward.
So, what are those consistencies then?
In terms of how you're
Well,
managing your money or what? Tell me, give
yeah,
me
I mean,
more.
so like the guidelines to put in place, this something like I know the specifics will be different, but like what's the consistent overarching correctness that you're talking about?
So the number one consistent overarching correctness is don't spend everything you make. Right? If you're spending as much as you make, if you're spending more than you make, you're not going to be able to get ahead financially. Like you're always going to feel like you're on this hamster wheel. So don't spend as much as you make. Another one that I give people a lot in terms of housing is spending about 25% of your take home pay on your housing, whether that's your rent, your mortgage payment. That gives you a lot of room for all of your other bills, your other needs, things that you just want, and still being able to make progress on your goals. Again, it's a guideline. So it's not like, oh, I'm at 28% or I'm at 30%. So that's wrong. It's not like that. But when you're starting to get into the 40, 50%, like, pretty up there, it just makes things really tight. And people have a lot of stress around their finances when they've got a huge housing payment that's taking out the majority or some huge chunk of their finances. So those are
which
two off the top of my head.
which also, God bless you, like anybody who can afford to live where they want at this point, I take my hat off. I bought my house 10 and a half years ago and it's worth twice what I paid for it, but I don't think it's worth twice what I paid for it,
The
even though it
same.
is.
Yeah, I bought my house about 8 years ago and the same. It's about
Yeah.
doubled in value. But yeah,
Was it
I've just had a lot of conversations with people who, feel really stressed about their finances. And when we dig into it, often they're spending half their income, like a literal whole check. A lot of people that I work with are employed, so they're
right?
getting two paychecks. I know it's a little bit different for those of you who are firm owners, but literally a whole check is going straight to their housing, and so they're living on the rest. And I spoke with one woman who was spending 70% of her income just on her house. She was in, I think, California. But yeah, it just, when you are in that position, it makes everything else a lot harder, makes everything else a lot tighter. So keep it to closer to a quarter, somewhere around there. Don't try not to, I'll say, get above a third of your take home pay. I don't know why banks use your, what is it, your gross pay? Because you don't see your gross pay. Like you have to pay taxes and things like that. And I don't think that makes sense. So I like to use
Mm,
what actually comes into my account as
right.
the measure for what I'm going to spend.
So
But I think you were going to
25% of
ask.
net pay.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
But you
See,
were about to say something or ask a question.
no, it's interesting. Like, you say 25% is the easy one to look for. So like I always tell, firm owners, until you get to the point where there's middle management, you're looking at like a third, a third, a third. A third on expenses, a third on staff, a third on profit. I was like, and nobody actually has those numbers, but I want you to think of why you are below or above those numbers. And like, let's look through that. And so, for the 28, 29%, and even for the 33% person, like just being aware of, okay, it's worth it to me to be closer to the office. It's worth it to me to be close to in a better school district. It's worth it to me, whatever the benefit is of living in one place versus another. I love that like that's your trigger for the awareness component of it.
Yeah, and I have seen like when people are in those higher percentages, like a third, that kind of thing, I have seen it work, but often it works because they don't have other payments. So maybe they paid off all of their debt or they don't have any debt because that's one of the
Um,
biggest things that takes money from people, right? Like the money is not in my pocket because I had to pay it to Chase and to Bank of America and to whatever other company that I have loans with and all of that. And so when you don't have those other payments coming out, then it does give you a little bit more wiggle room in terms of the housing payment. So I've seen people go higher, but it's because they had some other things happening, or I guess not happening in their finances that allowed for that. But for most people, they've got these other payments, and often it's thousands of dollars. Like in my case, our at one point our minimum payments were $3,500 a month. It's a lot of money that could be going to a house if I wanted to, if I didn't have
right.
those payments. So those are the types of things that we want to consider. Like I tell people, a lot of times people talk about wanting things because I'm a lawyer, like I work hard, I deserve it, that kind of thing. And I think the same thing comes up with houses where, okay, I'm making a little bit more. I want to get this bigger house or I want to get this nicer car or whatever the case may be. And yes, that's fine that you want those things, that you think you deserve those things. but neither of those is really as relevant as can your finances support having those things?
Mm,
Because sometimes we disregard that and then we end up in the stressful situation where now I've got, all of this money going out to this bill and I don't have the money that I want to have for these other things that I'm trying to do or these other responsibilities that I have and I'm stressed and money is tight. So I think the baseline thing that we want to be thinking about is can my finances support this thing? Even if it's something that I want, even if it's something I think I deserve, maybe it's something that you can get down the line, right? Like we talked about waiting a few months to take this trip, and now I've got the money saved and I've got all of these points that I can get an upgrade to my flight or, whatever it is. But often we don't want to wait and we try to get things right now because we think we
well,
deserve it.
also, I don't think, well, one, we don't know what anything costs until it's over. Like you can sit here and know, okay, it would be X for me to buy this car, but then are the oil changes more expensive? Are the
Mhm.
tires more expensive? Is the maintenance cost, okay, this house costs X, but then how much more is it going to cost me for a housekeeper, for landscaping, for power and water and, cool heating and cooling such a larger place? So it's really interesting to I love the component of you trying to get people to just have this better understanding of what's going to be valuable to them and what they can truly afford or what is worth what they can afford.
Yes. Yes, and I think you bring up such a great point that the cost that we see, the sticker price, if you will, is not the final cost in most instances. Because, yes, if I buy a house that's twice as big, but now my heating and cooling are also going to be more expensive. Or,
Right.
if I buy this car that's, a nicer car, an upgrade, now gas maybe is more expensive because I have to get a higher quality gas, or I've got to have more expensive maintenance, or the parts are going to be more expensive. So looking at those kinds of things is also important. And again, like you said, it comes back to what's important to me and what's not. For you, if it's not important to you to have a certain type of car, you think that you should just because you're a lawyer, maybe rethink that because the money that you would spend on that car could go to the nicer house that you want or, the thing that actually
Or
is
the
more important
shoes
to you or the
or
shoes, right?
or the fancy dinner. I mean, I'm down. I'm down for whatever. But from that point of being introspective, from that point of having a plan, from that point of actually thinking it through instead of just going because that's the way we've always done it, or that's how everybody else does it, or whatever.
Yes, I thought of a great example. One of my clients, when we did, so one of the things I do with my clients, I have them look back at about a month of spending so that we see like where is this money actually going. And when she looked, she saw that she had spent a lot of money shopping, but she doesn't actually value the clothes. She was buying things just because she thought that she should, like, oh, I'm at this firm and I've been wearing these things for a little bit, so maybe I should get something new. And she decided to decrease how much she was spending shopping so that she could do more takeout and going out to eat and things like that because she hates to cook. And so that's the kind of analysis that I want us all to do. It's like, what is this thing that I'm spending on that I actually don't care about that's taking money from something that I do care more about?
Dig it. All right, so for anybody who's been smart enough listening to this for the last 50 something minutes is like, I need more of Rho Thomas. I need more of this money mindset. I need to learn more about this. What's the best way for them to get in touch or stay connected with you?
Yeah, so if you go to my website, it's rhothomas.com, and that's RHO Thomas.com. And did I talk to you about the free gift that I wanted to give?
No.
Okay. Can we edit this part or do you just put it all
Sure.
out?
Yeah, yeah, whatever.
Okay, let me ask you. I have a debt guide that's like the 5 mistakes that keep lawyers in debt. Do you think it would be relevant for your clients or for your
We
audience?
we can find out.
Okay, I'll do that because I created a page for it. If you go to rothomas.com/Jordan, I
Okay.
created a page for your listeners. But then in our conversations, we were kind of steering away from that. So I was like, oh well, maybe they wouldn't want this debt guide.
We'll find out.
Okay, so I'll say that. And if you go to rothomas.com/Jordan, you can get a copy of my free guide. It goes over the 5 most common mistakes that I see lawyers make that keep them from getting out of debt. So if you're struggling with debt, that guide will definitely help you.
And probably sounds like also things that are keeping their business from being profitable.
Possibly.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you to everybody who watched and listened. I know this was helpful to me, so I assume it was helpful to all of you. And we'll see you back next week for the next episode of LEI'D Back Life. In the meantime, have a great weekend.